Hello. Okay, so just over a week ago, I went to MCM Birmingham Comic Con where I cosplayed as Doctor Strange, and I took with me some prop magic spells that I'd made. I got a bunch of photos with people, had a really awesome time, met some really cool people who had made some really awesome cosplays. But a bunch of people were asking me if I'd made them, where I'd got them, what they were made out of, this kind of thing. So I thought that'd actually be a pretty good idea for a video. So that's what we're going to do today. So no messing around, let's get to it. So I went onto Thingiverse to see if there were any designs for this and found a really good one by a maker called Matt Wilson. I downloaded this and then chucked it into my 3D building software. Since I wanted these props to be pretty big, I increased the size up to 350mm in diameter and then sliced it into quarters so it could fit on my printer a lot easier and I could print them out this way. I set both my printers going and chose to do this without a raft or anything just to save on time and material, and was able to get an entire one done in about 8 hours. Something that might be worth noting is that when I slice this into quarters, I only used 1/4 from the original design, so this is just a repeating pattern, which is slightly different to what it was originally, but to be honest it looks pretty good together still, so I'm not too concerned about that, but if you wanted to try this for yourself, that might be something worth remembering. So with everything printed out, the next thing to do is glue it all together. I use hard plastic glue, and I use this on most of my 3D prints just because I found that this glue works really well and has a really strong bond. Now, as you can see, I don't have a very big surface area to put this on, so I just tried to do it as carefully as possible, getting it on the smaller bits. Now, this is not going to be the final thing that holds it together. I'm going to solder it a little bit later, but first I have to wait a few hours for this to dry. Now, as well as the 3D printed part of this, I'm also going to need something for it to rest on. So I went onto a website called plasticsheets.com and ordered 2 orange tinted Perspex discs, both cut to 350mm each, so they'd be the same size as the 3D print when it was all together. And after the glue had finished drying on the other piece I was making, I got my soldering iron and quickly just went up and down the bits where I joined it together just to give it a bit more strength. This step wasn't super necessary, but I just preferred it as one whole piece instead of 4 separate ones, so it'd be a little bit easier to handle. Now that this was done, all I had to do was paint it, so that's what I moved on to next. I hung the entire thing up so it'd be a little bit easier for me to paint, and then went over it with a couple of coats of this filler primer. This is sort of a yellow sunsetty colour, which I found worked really well against the orange discs that I bought. The colours were a pretty good fit for what I wanted the final design to look like. I only painted one side of this because hard plastic glue actually sort of eats away at paint, and I didn't want it to ruin it when I came to attach it to the Perspex, but I did try my best to get all down the edges and right into the little bits just to make sure there was no grey showing through. So now all I need to do is wait for my discs to arrive. They've arrived. Wow, wasn't that fast through the power of editing. This is what they look like without the 3D print on, and when I put it on you can actually see it starting to take shape a little bit. So all I need to do now is glue it on. However, since these are made out of smooth plastic, I got some fine grit sandpaper and just scuffed up all the edges just to give them a rough texture so that the glue would work a little bit better. The glue works better if it has something to sink into instead of just putting it on a smooth surface. So I'm just sanding down the areas of where the 3D printed part of this is going to go, making sure not to go too crazy because I don't want to damage this. And here you can sort of see how much I scuffed it up. Again, I tried not to go too crazy, this is only so the glue can adhere a little bit better. So again, using hard plastic adhesive, I went all around the edges, trying to cover as much as possible, but not going too crazy with how much I applied, and then just stuck the entire thing on. Since the glue takes a little while to dry, I left this upside down so the weight of the acrylic would press against the 3D print and hold it in place. Whilst the glue was drying, I set my 3D printer going and made these little D-shaped rings. These are going to be so I can hold the entire thing when it's completed. I made 3 for each hand, one for my thumb, index finger and ring finger, then marked out the placement of these with a marker pen, and sanded these areas down like I did for the other side so it'd be a little bit easier to glue on later. I applied a decent amount to the 3D print and the acrylic and then pressed them down into place just to make sure they were in the right position and they weren't going to come loose or anything. I held this for about a minute or so and then left the entire thing to dry for a few hours. And that's how I made my Doctor Strange builds. Hope you enjoyed.